long distance relationship success secrets. Hey there, everybody. I'm going to be talking about how to have a successful long distance relationship. This is something that I used to only see a little bit in the past, where people would, mention that they were in a long distance relationship. But I am seeing it more and more frequently these days. And I think it has to do with the rise in online dating. People are getting frustrated with the pool in their local area. They're starting to broaden that area and be open to the possibility of dating people much further away. There may be other factors as well, just as, it could be the modern technology that we have makes it possible to have a long distance relationship. However, I'm also seeing a lot of people struggling with those long distance relationships. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how can you do long distance relating successfully. And at the end of my tips on how to have a successful long distance relationship, I'm going to share a video with you from one of my viewers who reached out to me telling me about her successful long distance relationship. And I asked her to come on and share some of her tips as well. All right, before we get started, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Those things really help the channel, and I really appreciate it. If you like this kind of content, please help my channel be successful, because that is what enables me to continue making this content. Hey everybody, I am Kevin Anthony, and I'm a certified sexologist, Tantra Counselor, NLP Practitioner, and sex, love, and relationship coach. And for over 10 years, I have been helping men, women, and couples have the relationship of their dreams and the best sex of their lives. Okay, so you find yourself in a long distance relationship. That could be simply because you expanded your dating range such that you met somebody that was significantly further away from where you live. It could be that a partner is away for a work project for a certain amount of time. It could be somebody had to move for a particular reason. There are a lot of reasons why you could end up in a long distance relationship. And when it comes to shifting around life priorities like your work and your home and your family and things like that, it can take time to be able to make the changes you need to make to be physically together in the same space. So there's a lot of reasons why you might be in a long distance relationship. And if you are, there are some things that can help make that easier. Number one, you have to establish trust. It is really important that you establish as deep a level of trust as you can. That might look like a lot of different things. If you were together previously and somebody had to leave for a particular amount of time, really work on developing that trust when you are physically together. If you just met and you're in physically separate places, then it's just going to require a lot of really open and honest conversations where you really get to develop the intimacy and the depth and start to cultivate some trust. You need to be able to trust the person when they are physically distant from you. And one of the biggest things that gets in the way is people lose trust. They lose trust because one partner isn't communicating the way that they would like. They lose trust because they haven't established the depth and the connection and the intimacy. They lose trust maybe because the frequency of communication isn't enough. So it's really important, if you want to have a successful long distance relationship, you have to find ways to establish trust. Okay, number two, you need to have really good boundaries. If you're going to be physically separated, you really got to talk about the boundaries. Like, what are you allowed to do? Are you allowed to spend time with women who are just friends? Are you still potentially dating on the side until you can get together? What are the boundaries? The boundaries could be things like how frequently you want to communicate. And that's actually the next one that I want to talk about also. But boundaries could also be things like the style of communication. So it's really important that you have these conversations about what are the boundaries that you need during this time away. And they're just questions that you need to ask each other and agree on. The problem is a lot of times people don't have these conversations. They literally don't ask the questions. And then they're on the other end going, well, I wonder if he's doing this, or I wonder if she's doing that, or I wish they would do this or do that, but maybe it means this or maybe it means that. And the reality is you can get rid of all of that insecurity if you have really good conversations and set those boundaries up front. Number 3 is be really clear about your communication needs. So I started to mention this when talking about boundaries, but you have to be really clear. I would like to, have phone or leave messages back and forth every single day. Just tell me how your day was, check in, see how I'm doing, whatever it is. It could be, I would like to have a video call once a week, twice a week, whatever it is. Whatever it is, you just want to make sure that it's really clear and that you really set those boundaries. And it's important because otherwise it's like, well, why didn't he call? Or why didn't she message me? Or how come, I have no idea what they did for the last 3 days, right? It's really important that you make those needs known and that you speak up for them, because a lot of times people will say things like, well, I don't know, that's kind of unreasonable. Like, should I really expect him to message me every day? And then, they'll go against what their intuition is telling them, and they'll say, no, you don't have to message me every single day. It's perfectly okay. And then 2 or 3 days go by, and what's happening? It is just tearing at your heart, and you're coming up with all these stories about what the other person is potentially up to because you didn't speak your mind and you didn't ask for what you want. So be really clear about what type of communication you want and need. All right, number 4 is have video calls when possible. We live in a day and age where we've got lots of technology to help us through these things. Use the technology. As I said in the beginning of this video, hear a lot from people who are in long-distance relationships. And I find that the majority of communication that they actually have is via text message, which I think is absolutely terrible. Text messages should just be for like, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Can you pick this up on your way home at the store? That sort of thing. Just super short, basic transactional things. We should not be using text messages for important communications. Things where seeing somebody's facial expressions or hearing the tone of their voice would be important. And anytime you're dealing with relationships, those things are important. So I really prefer that people use the technology we have available to us, such as video calls. You got FaceTime, you got Signal, you got all kinds of other ones out there. Use whatever it is that you have. See the person's face, hear their voice, connect with them. That is crucially important to maintaining that bond over a long distance and over a long time. And that brings me to number 5. If you're going to be separated for a long time, it doesn't mean that your sexual needs just disappear. You're likely still going to have them. But if you have rules in place or boundaries or agreements that you have made that say, hey, we are going to be monogamous even though we are physically distant, then there are potentially ways to meet those needs. Back in the old days, dating myself here, we called it phone sex, right? But nowadays you can do video sex as well. So I highly suggest that you take some time to connect sexually via phone or via video. You don't even have to show anything. Sometimes people are concerned about, well, what if, it gets hacked or whatever. You don't have to show your genitals. You could just show your face, right? So there are ways that you can connect sexually when you're distant, and you have the technology to make that a whole lot easier. And I really think that's a great way to continue to maintain the intimacy between both of you when you are apart. All right, number 6. So if this time apart is going to be a long amount of time, several months, maybe a year, then I highly suggest that you make time to do some visits back and forth. So I hear this a lot from people in long distance relationships when they are on opposite sides of a country, or when they're even in different countries. Maybe they're away for work for 6 months, right? One way to handle that is to say, okay, maybe we can't do it every month because that's 6 trips. Maybe you can't afford that, but you say, hey, maybe in 2 months I'll come visit you, and then 2 months later you can come visit me, and then 2 months after that we'll be back together again, right? So finding ways to meet. Sometimes you can actually meet in the middle. If you're really distant, you can say, hey, I'll fly halfway, you fly halfway. Let's meet in the middle for a long weekend or a week or something like that. So I highly suggest that if the period of time is going to be long, that you find ways to meet in between. I know it's not always financially possible, or even possible via, how much time you have, but if you can possibly do it, it goes a long way towards, again, keeping that intimacy between you, keeping that connection going and nurturing that connection while you are apart. And lastly, number 8, if possible, and I know it's not always possible, but if possible, I highly recommend that you have a clear end date to when this period of time will end. I have seen situations where it's like, hey, I'm going to be deployed for X number of months. Okay, great. We know what the end date of that is. I have also seen situations where it's like, well, I'm getting transferred here for my job, and the other person's like, all right, well, I need to find a job, I need to sell my house, I need to figure out, how to move my kids from their school to a new school, and there's really no defined time for how long that's going to take. And those kinds of big changes, they can take a while, and people can be very hesitant to do them. And so what can happen is the time period just keeps dragging on and on and on and on. This can be a real problem because one partner or another can get very frustrated by this. And if the time goes on too long, and if you haven't been doing all of the other things that I've suggested in this video, somebody might get frustrated enough to want to end that relationship. So if you can, it's great to have a clearly defined end time. Like, this is how long the time is going to be. That will also help you plan some of the other things that I've talked about in this video. For instance, getting together. If you know it's going to be X number of months, you can say, okay, we only need to plan 1 trip, or maybe we need to plan 2 or 3 trips, right? Or maybe we don't need any trips at all. So it's really helpful to have that. And then you both have an end date, sort of a destination that you're looking forward to and that you're moving towards, rather than it being stuck in this sort of gray zone of, I don't really know what's going on, I'm not sure when we're going to be together, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this going, kind of thing. Now, I know that's not always possible. There are some situations that arise where you just don't know what it's going to be. But many times you do know, and so I would say make that really clear. Okay, there you go. Those are my tips for what to do to have a successful long-distance relationship. Next, we're going to hear from Jaci, and she's going to share how she has been successfully navigating a long-distance relationship. All right, as promised, I have Jaci here, and she's going to share some of her tips for how she has been successfully navigating a long-distance relationship. So, Jaci, welcome to the video here.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So go ahead and share some of your strategies. Let's start with the first one. What is the first strategy that you've been using to navigate a long distance relationship successfully?
Communication is key no matter what, long distance or not.
Absolutely. So around communication, do you have any sort of rules, like maybe how frequently you agree to communicate or the types of things that you talk about?
Right now it's every day. I prefer over the phone, but sometimes due to his work schedule, it's just not possible. So sometimes it's texting 5 minutes a day and just telling each other how our day is gone. I also just like to send a birthday card in the mail, or a hey, I'm thinking about you card in the mail, or a sexy text, hey, this is what I'm wearing tonight, but I'm thinking about you. So that's our strategy. I mean, being a woman, I think I'm better at it than he is as far as the letter writing and things like that. But, um, and I think you just kind of have to put a little sizzle into your relationship because there is a distance between, and make efforts to either meet halfway or do whatever is convenient for you guys. I mean, there has to be some give and take with every situation.
Absolutely. Okay, so your first piece of advice was to communicate, and your preference is communicating every single day, preferably by phone, if not text message when it's not possible, and of course also, sending cards or things like that. So your second piece of advice there was meeting, right? Like actually meeting potentially halfway. Would you talk about
Yes.
that a little bit more? How do you guys navigate that?
Well, there's exactly an hour and a half distance between us. So lately I've been driving to him and staying at a hotel, but because of his work schedule, I never know if and when I'm going to see him. So I usually just spend the night at the hotel, or we might split the cost of the hotel. He pays half, I pay the other half, whatever the case is, whomever has the money. And I just spend the night there and I relax. I catch up on the book I'm writing and email, text, call friends and family. I always tell at least one person where I am in case something were to happen, but I don't feel like the whole world needs to know where I am all the time. Um, and then if he's able to stop by and visit or just hang out or, even be intimate, even if it's a quickie or whatever the case is. Um, and then we'll switch on and off and do that. Like he hasn't been, we're a state apart from each other, which isn't too bad, but he will come and visit me as well. And then not lately, it's been quite a while, but sometimes we'll meet like right in the middle, maybe at a hotel between Missouri and Arkansas.
Great. So that is another wonderful piece of advice, and it's one that I talk about also. When people are going to be separated for a particularly long length of time, it's best to try to arrange visits in between and to space them out depending on how long it's going to be. So if it's going to be
Yes.
6 months, you might every month or every 2 months make sure that you actually meet in person. If it's going to be a year, you might space it out differently. It seems to me that in your case, you're just trying to do it as frequently as it makes sense.
Yes, for both of us. We're both very, very, very busy people.
Awesome. So, any other pieces of advice or strategies that you are using currently?
We call each other a lot, even if it's just to leave a voicemail, say, hey, here's how my day went. Like I said, communication, I think, is the key for any relationship. I don't care if you're dating somebody, engaged, divorced, separated, intimate with a person, regardless of your status. Communication is key. Um, I think, again, communication, I think, revolves around everything. And that being said, send the card, send them a box of candy, send a single rose, on what would be your anniversary. Um, and just, you kind of have to make fun of yourself sometimes, I think, or even the other person. You have to laugh or you're going to cry from being apart from somebody. I mean, right now my heart hurts physically, mentally, and emotionally. I miss him and I know he feels the same way. But we can't just be together right now. We are happily engaged. Hopefully about this time next year we'll be married. So I mean, it's been like this for such a long time. It's just become habit for us.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the tips. And one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on was because I wanted people to hear from somebody who's really going through it, somebody who's really doing it, and how they're managing it successfully, how they're navigating it. And what I think the viewers are hearing from you are some successful strategies, and they're also hearing that it's actually working for you. And I think that's
Yeah,
important for people to hear.
it does work. And my ex-husband was in the military. He was in the U.S. Army and ended up being deployed to Afghanistan after 9/11. So we were apart for almost a year, and I had just had our newborn daughter Grace. He ended up being deployed to Iraq when she was 3 or 4 weeks old, and came home when she was almost a year old. So we also did the same tactics that Charles and I are doing.
All right, so you are sort of an expert in long distance
Unfortunately,
relationships.
yes. Not something I'm proud of, but yes.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on here and sharing your experience and being an example to everybody out there that if you have to be in a long distance relationship for whatever reason, whether you're deployed in the military or you simply live in different states and you can't quite merge your lives together yet, that you can successfully do this.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy to help.
All right, we just heard from Jaci sharing her tips and advice on how she is successfully navigating a long distance relationship. I hope you found this helpful, and as always, for more information about anything sex, love, and relationship, please go to my website, kevinandceline.com/link in bio. That is where you can find more information on everything that I'm up to, from my podcast to my YouTube channel to my coaching programs, my online programs, and so much more.